So I am so pleased to be talking to lovely Siobhan Curran, who, am I pronouncing your surname correctly, Siobhan?
You are, well done, because I have the worst name ever to pronounce, so it's very unusual that people get both names correct, so
Try
thank you.
Huey. Try H-U.
Oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, Siobhan's amazing, and I met Siobhan at The Awakening.
Yes, on
Yes,
the Isle
The
of Wight.
Awakening on the Isle of Wight, and
In the haunted house.
beautiful haunted house.
Yeah.
And we were both speaking there and sort of talking about our latest books. But Siobhan is a bit of a ledge in the publishing game, though she's very self-deprecating. She's written over 30 books and is award-winning. And I think what really struck me about Siobhan, because there's loads of authors out there, but in terms of the thing that really made me want to work with you, was both the kind of, you know, your values around and your real commitment to opening up the publishing industry to people who, you know, often aren't the usual suspects that get booked in. But also just sharing this beautiful gift of writing and self-expression for the sake of writing and self-expression, you know, and with everybody. And also that you've written both fiction and non-fiction, and published by major book publishers, but also self-published. So you've got such kind of holistic experience.
Yeah, it has. It's funny, you know, because I've just been head down getting on with it. It's been 20 years since my first book was published, and it's only when you take a step back and think, wow, yeah, I've done all of that. But that's what's so good, because I think I have a lot to offer other writers, because I've experienced all these different aspects of publishing and writing for different age groups as well, you know. So I feel like it's great, because I've got to a point where pretty much, you know, or most people with a writing dream could come to me, and I'd be able to offer them some kind of advice based on my experience.
And writing is one of those things, isn't it? It's like a real bucket list bullet point on I think so many people's lists, male, female, and yet so few actually follow through.
Yeah, I think because it's so daunting. I mean, I've lost count now of the number of people that say to me when I meet them at a party or wherever, say, oh, I want to write a book, you know, because they hear that I'm a writer, so it sparks that conversation. But yeah, because a book is a big thing, isn't it? Let's face it. So I think it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'd love to write a book, but actually it requires a lot of just sitting there on your own, slogging away for a long time, and so I understand why people you know, get daunted or don't get it finished or whatever, because it is a massive thing. And again, that's why I like helping people, because I think, yes, it's a big thing, but it isn't impossible. It definitely is not impossible. And as someone who, you know, because back in the day I gave up on my writing dream, and I actually dropped out of uni because I didn't think I had what it took to be a writer. So I really get that. I get the resistance, I get the fear, I get the lack of confidence and the self-doubt. I've experienced all of that, but also I'm living proof that actually it is not only possible, but it's actually really enjoyable, and it's just a great thing to do.
Life-changing, isn't it? It's life.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
What would you say the biggest sort of obstacles that stop people from, you know, entertaining that thought, I'd love to write a book, and actually following it through?
I think background is a big one. That was my sort of the cause of my giving up initially, was because I didn't think I was from the right background, you know, and I grew up on a council estate, and I got to uni, and this is back in the day when only 10% of people went to uni, and so those people tended to be from very wealthy backgrounds. And some of the people on my course who also wanted to be writers had contacts through their parents in the publishing world, you know, so in the holidays they were able to get work experience, which is so vital, you know, it's a really good way into publishing or whatever. And, you know, I didn't have any of that. So I think background can be a big thing, you know, and a big voice in your head that says, oh, you know, you don't belong in that world, you haven't got what it takes. And of course it's crap, you know, and again, I'm proof of that, but it is hard, because actually most of the people in publishing are from a white, very sort of posh or middle class background, and So that it's a real and justified kind of reason for people having that doubt, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. I think another thing is, and a common thing I get is people who, when I'm coaching writers, people who maybe didn't do very well at school, or they had one teacher, because it just seems to take one person saying something negative, doesn't it? It stays with you for life. So I have a lot of people that I coach who were, for whatever reason, believe that they weren't very good academically and therefore can't write a book. But actually being a writer is all about being able to tell a good story. And I know people I've met down the pub, like Irish builders or whatever, who dropped out of school probably at 15, who can spin a brilliant yarn, and tell a great story and keep you engaged and captivated. So again, it's just a case, whatever the doubt or the reason for your lack of belief is, it's just about challenging it and asking yourself, is it really, really true? That I'll just give you a quick example. What helped me overcome my self-doubt was I met a writer called Jimmy McGovern, who's a very well-known writer from Liverpool. He's written lots of things for TV. Cracker was one of his big sort of TV series. And I met him just around the time when I dropped out of uni, and then I saw, at the time, he's writing a series called Brookside, which is on Channel 4. And then he sort of went from strength to strength, and I saw his career progress. And I knew he was from exactly the same background as me. And so I knew, well, it's actually not true to say that someone from this background can't be a success as a writer. So I think anyone watching this who has some doubts, whatever they might be, try and find someone who kind of proves you wrong. Someone from the same background or whatever it is, but who has made a success of a writing career or had a book published, just to help you balance out that voice, that negative voice that tells you can't do it.
Definitely one of the things that really, I got so much beautiful, continue to get so much beautiful feedback from Purpose, but it definitely really touches me when people get in touch and say, it's just great to hear your story, because your story is my story, and that's a rarity. So it's you really have to see it in order to know it's possible.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. That's why I find you so inspiring, because when I read Purpose, and I remember reading the first few pages thinking, oh my god, this is, I could relate to it so much, and then seeing what you went on to achieve, it's so inspiring. So I think it's great, for people watching this who do really wish they could write a book, but having these kind of doubts, read about other writers. J.K. Rowling was another big inspiration for me, because I was a single mum when I was starting out my writing career. So, when I read that story about her in the cafe writing Harry Potter, that really inspired me, because it showed me what was possible. So I think, find people like that to, as your kind of inspiration.
Yeah. And so publishing, with a traditional publisher, for people that are watching and are kind of, have decided they're going to do it, publishing traditionally versus self-publishing, you've got experience of both. What would you?
So I started out, my first 4 books were traditionally published by big publishers like Hodder and Random House. Then I was dropped by my publisher because my 4th book, my 3rd novel, didn't sell very well. And so I thought that was it. I thought, complete failure. I'll never get a book deal again. But I still wanted to write. And that's when I had my idea for my first young adult novel. Previously, I'd written for adults. But because I thought, I'll never get a traditional book deal again, I decided I was going to self-publish. And it was around the time of self-publishing was really taking off, and it was really exciting, because it's kind of like the music industry in a way, in that because of the internet, it's enabled writers to publish their own work, and we're not so reliant on the gatekeepers and the publishers and agents anymore. So I was excited by that, and actually writing that book was one of the best creative experiences I've had, because I wasn't writing from a place of fear or trying to keep other people happy, so I could just create purely from the heart. So that's a great thing about self-publishing, that you have full control, and you're not sort of thinking, oh yeah, but what do agents want, what do publishers want? You just, you can write really from the heart. And so I self-published that first novel, and I really enjoyed also the process of, just getting to see every aspect of the publishing model, like you know, getting someone to design your cover and having control over that, which you don't necessarily have in traditional publishing, and then sending it out there. So the whole thing was a really fun experience for me. And then, yeah, and then sort of that book went on to win a National Book Award. And then it went to auction, because then everyone wanted to know, because obviously it's a big story, because it's a self-published book that had beaten all these books by well-known authors. So it was a fairy tale moment for me, you know. But I think the big lesson I learned from that was that I never ever anticipated that happening. And so, like I said, you know, self-publishing gave me the freedom to really create from the heart, to enjoy it. And then all this other great stuff came off the back of it, because then, you know, once it went to auction, that was 10 years ago. And since then, you know, everything I've written has been traditionally published. And like you said, I've had, you know, I've written over 30 books now. And
how many books a year do you do?
Pardon?
How many books a year do you write?
Oh gosh, well, it's sort of, I think it's kind of like physical exercise writing. I found you get quicker and better the more you do, you know. So like when I started out, like my first novel, oh my god, that just took me forever, because I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and it was just this painstaking thing. But now, yeah, I mean, now I can sort of write a lot quicker. So, you know, for example, like I've got a novel coming out, a young adult novel coming out this summer, and the first draft of that took me about 3 months to write. And then obviously there are rewrites and stuff, you know, but it's a lot quicker than it used to be. But so yeah, I think I'd really recommend self-publishing as a really viable option. You know, I think I would always say to people, try traditional publishing first. If you want to be a writer as a career, then definitely try getting a traditional book deal first. But if you don't, then self-publishing is a really good plan B, you know, and it's a great way of proving to publishers, yes, I can, you know, sort of get a readership for my work. And a lot of authors are doing that now, you know, they're self-publishing, they're selling shed loads, and then of course then publishers want a piece of that pie, you know, and you've kind of proved to them that, yeah, you know, it's sort of you're worth investing in. So it's a really good, and I like to compare it to the music industry, because I think you know, there's a lot of musicians who've done that, you know, they've put their work out sort of for free initially, and then created this following, and then get their record deal, you know. So it's a great you know, it's a great option to have, for sure.
Just made me think, when in terms of how quickly you write. Funny story. I over half term I wrote a little. My son came up with a story. He's 8, and I found this really cool piece of software where you can actually the kids can type in the story and then match it to illustrations. And so we got it printed, and it looks really beautiful, and he's really proud of it. And it sort of looks as if it's been published, you know, in the preface. And so a couple of days later, he said, right, it's time we do the next book. And I said, well, you've only just done one. And he said, Mum, I'm not going to leave people waiting as long as you have.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I'm going to remember that. It's like an exercise. So the more you do it, I think that's the same kind of inspiration and creativity. You literally have to work the muscle, don't you? And
absolutely. And I really, it's so nice getting to this point, because I remember so well, you know, it was kind of a painful process writing my first novel, you know, because, you know, I mean, it was a necessary process, because it's like if you want to run a marathon, you can't just go straight out and run a marathon, you know, you have to build up to it. You're gonna feel sluggish at first, but yeah, I mean, if you sit down day after day and you keep writing, you keep learning, and you do get quicker and better. And yeah, so
what advice would you give to people who they've got their idea? What's the best way to start? You know, and I'd imagine it's different for non-fiction to a novel, but what's the best way to start mapping out how to write this book?
I would say for fiction and non-fiction, start by having a big brainstorm, you know, kind of so just all the bullet points, like the things that you feel must go into this book, you know, the things that you already know have to go in there. So if it's fiction, you might have, you know, you've got your basic idea, and you might already have some key scenes that you've sort of you know, you know have to go in the book. You're not sure what else is going to go in there, but write them down first. And I'm a big fan of doing a lot of preparation, because I find that the more preparation you do, then the quicker and easier the writing is, because you're not having to keep stopping and figuring stuff out. So for fiction, a really good thing that I've found so helpful is doing character questionnaires. So these are just a questionnaire of loads of random questions, anything from what's their favorite meal to what do they think of their parents, what's their greatest fear or their biggest dream or whatever. And you know, you can create one of these yourself, you can find them online, and you just go through and you answer each question from the point of view of the character. And by doing that, it really helps you get to think and really properly flesh out a character, so they're not just one-dimensional. And also that often gives you really good ideas for the plot as well, because if you discover, you know, if you're doing that and you're like, oh, their greatest fear could be flying, you know, and then you think, oh, I could work that into the plot, because maybe they at some point they have to get a flight, and that's going to be really dramatic, you know. So it's that, so that's really, really helpful. And I think yeah, just kind of knowing where you want to go. So if it's non-fiction, knowing what the underlying message of the book is, so that you don't go wandering off on a tangent, you know, and then you can make sure. And another tip for both fiction and non-fiction, I would say, is always write, you know, keep your reader in mind, and making sure just that might be a question maybe for the second draft, you know, but just making sure, well, what's the reader going to get from this, you know? And so when I'm coaching fiction writers, I get them to say with every chapter, what has the reader got from this chapter? And that's a good way of figuring out, oh, is this just filler, and actually is this needed, you know, does it kind of, because sometimes, especially when you're starting out, you can go off on a bit of a tangent, and you can, you know, you're not sure what you're doing, so you end up writing stuff that actually doesn't belong there, you know. So I think bringing it back to the reader, a good question is, who really needs me to write this book, you know?
I like that. Who really needs me to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, particularly for non-fiction, but also for fiction. But yeah, non-fiction, sure, you know, yeah. And that's just a good way of getting you focused.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about non-fiction, because I know certainly, you know, a lot of my audience are, you know, experts in some capacity.
Yeah.
Or have a strong message that they want to share with the world. What are the benefits that I mean, I can talk a little bit about this as well, because purpose is just, you know, it's completely taken my life in a new direction and opened up a new way of working, you know, new revenue streams, just completely changed the way I work and my lifestyle, and brought it home to me, you know. So I'm really doing the work that I love in the way that I want to work, which is such a gift, you know. I'm there for the school run, and I'm able to run retreats in Jamaica because I love being in Jamaica. And it's come from Purpose, the book. And a lot of my clients, in fact, most of them now, come because they've read the book.
Right.
Well, what's your experience been in terms of the benefits of writing nonfiction?
I think there's huge benefits. I think having a book also helps if you want to, you know, if you want to start a career or a branch of your career on the public speaking circuit, because so often, you know, when people are trying to get speaking gigs, if you've got a book, it gives you authority. You know, you can say I'm an author as well as a coach or whatever it is you do. But also then you have something to sell at the talk. So imagine you're giving a talk to a few hundred people and they enjoy the talk, and then you've got your book there. So it really feeds into, it's a great thing to have in your kind of arsenal, if you like, you know. And so I've worked with clients. I mean, it's helped me. It's, you know, like you said, it's brought me into areas like, because I had a non-fiction book published last year, which was about spirituality. And as a consequence, I've done all these kind of talks or events in mind, body, spirit places, which is something I'd never gone into before. And that's how we met, you know. And so it's really opened up a lot of things for me. But I've also worked with clients. There's one that's really coming to mind, who is an expert in the music industry, and he set up BIM, which is now the biggest music college in the world. and he has so much knowledge, you know, to sort of share with musicians. And so he came to me to help him write. Well, he's now written 2 books, and as a consequence of that, he's now been invited all over the world to give talks, you know, off the back of his book. And so he's just reaching so many more people than he was before. So I think having a non-fiction book, whatever it is you do, it just helps you reach more people, and it helps kind of feed into maybe the higher end of whatever it is that you do. But if, you know, if you do one-to-one consulting or whatever, and you know, you might charge hundreds or thousands for that, but if you've got a book that's $9.99, it's a great way of just saying to someone, here, you know, like, try this, see if you like it. And then if they like, you know, it's a great way of them getting to know your voice and what you're about, and at low cost, so that they then might invest in your, whatever it is, your sort of higher ticket offering.
Yeah. And with a non-fiction, so you the standard is that you have you create your book proposal if you're going to go the publisher route, and 2 to 3 chapters of the book. But with a novel, you have to write the whole book, don't you?
Yes, you do. Yeah. So it's a much kind of scarier prospect in that sense, in that just the amount of time you have to invest, not really knowing if anything's going to come of it. But that's where self-publishing is so good, because now I think, back in the day before self-publishing, it really was dependent on, you know, getting a traditional book deal. So you could have spent months or years writing a book that might never ever see the light of day. But now at least we do have that plan B, that self-publishing option. And like I said, lots of writers are making a really good living now from self-publishing. So I still
No, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I still think it's a very good investment of time. You know, it's not a huge gamble. That you will still have a product at the end of it which you'll be able to sell, and it's just whether or not you sell that through a traditional publisher or on your own. You know, so yes, it's a lot of work, but you will still see some return for it.
And the process is so joyful. You know, if you aren't doing it in a pressurized way. I mean, beyond the sort of professional, even though, you know, my personal and professional life has blurred in so many ways, in a good way, beyond that, personally, my growth and expansion as a human being, and my sort of spiritual evolution has been so enhanced through the act of writing. And there is nothing for me that, you know, is more precious, just to be reconnected with my creativity that, you know, was lost as a kid somewhere, when you get into the kind of should space.
Absolutely, that's the thing. And it annoys me sometimes, because I think there are some people who they try and make out that, oh, writing, especially in fiction, you know, I think there's still some snobbery around fiction writing in this country anyway. And some writers, you see them and they talk, in all seriousness, I saw an interview with a writer once, and he was a literary writer, and he was saying that he now knows what young men felt like in the First World War, going over the top of the trenches, because that's how he feels every morning when he sits down in front of a blank page. And when I read that, I was like, firstly, is this a wind-up? And then it was in the Guardian newspaper, so clearly it wasn't. It was a serious thing. And he was actually likening it to that. And I just wanted to, well, I won't swear, but, you know, I wanted to say something very rude. Because, you know, and I get why people do that, because they want to make out that they're really special because they're writers and no one understands the torture we go through. And it's like, oh, come on, you know, we're creating. And it's like, you don't see little kids, do you? You know, this is what I say when I run workshops. It's one of the first things I'll say to people, you know, it's kind of like, right, remember what it was like when you were a child. Even if you didn't write stories when you were a kid, we all created stories, because we'd be, you know, we'd have our imaginary friends or our real friends, but we'd create these worlds to play in, like these imaginary worlds that we were playing in. And you don't see a little kid going, oh God, it's just so hard, I can't think of a plot twist. I mean, kids just, they go all in and they create the story and they have fun with it. And they're always kind of coming from that point of view of what can make this even more fun or even more exciting or even more scary, you know? And so I think at the moment I'm writing a rom-com, and yesterday I was in a cafe and I had this scene and I was like, it's okay, it's just not that great. And then I sort of asked myself, what could make this really funny? Like, what could happen right now? What could I make happen to these characters that would be really hilarious? And then I came up with an idea, and then I'm sitting there chuckling away to it, probably looking like a nutter in the cafe, but having so much fun because I've come up with this funny idea. And so, just kind of how I would when I was a kid, and so I think that's such an important point that you raised. Don't take it too seriously. Of course, take it seriously if you want it to be part of your career or your career. You have to take that element of it seriously, but have fun with the creativity, because your writing will be all the better for it, I think.
100%. Yeah. And there's a wonderful writer. Let me just check his name, because I want to give the right name, but he says you should treat your writing like it's holy. And I love that. It's this kind, because that's what it felt like. Grief is the thing with feathers, Max Porter.
Oh yeah,
beautiful book. And I love that, because it, for me, I mean, obviously Purpose sort of was born out of caring for my dad and a space of grief, but nonetheless it was such a joyous, sacred process to come back to that habit of writing. And
absolutely,
almost like a kind of, it was complete me time. It was complete it was delicious. It was just delicious.
Yeah, I think that's such another lovely sort of element to it, isn't it? And if you can get around your fear and everything, then absolutely. I mean, so many writers talk about the feeling like they're channeling, and certainly I've experienced that. I don't know if you did when you were writing Purpose, but feeling like it's almost as if the book already exists. You have to just get your ego and your fear out of the way for it to come through you onto the page. And I think when you get into those moments of flow, there's nothing like it. And that is a spiritual experience for sure, because you're just tapping into something bigger than you and letting it come through you, and you've got your fear to shut up for once, so it can be such a special experience. A little exercise actually that I did, I ran a little mini retreat recently, and I did this exercise which actually I'd never done before with people, but went down really well and got some really good results. So anyone watching this, you could do this too. And it's just going with this notion that your idea for a book already exists somewhere out in the ether, and you are the channel for it. Imagine if that idea was writing a letter to you. And then I had some questions, and it was things like, so it'd be, dear Jessica, or whatever. I've chosen you to write me because, so that just gets you into that thing of, why am I the person to write this? The world needs you to write me because, and I'm trying to think of, I'll add to the comments because there are a couple of other questions, but it was that thing of just getting you to think of, this idea already there, and you as a channel, and let it communicate to you. And when people did this in the retreat, it was really interesting because they got the, like I said, I'd never done it before, so I was sitting there thinking, oh God, I hope, they're not just sitting there blankly, but they got some lovely things coming through. Oh, and then the final one was just a PS. So then it's kind of like, just see what comes. So kind of free write whatever comes. So I really recommend people do that, because I think it's going back to that point you made about writing being more of a spiritual practice.
Yeah, just honouring it. Yeah, I like candles. It's like date night, me and my book, me and
Oh, I remember you did a post, didn't you, say it's date night? Yeah, it was
sorry. Like, oh. Wonderful. And letting go of the agenda in that as well. Because your best writing does just come from
absolutely
being in the moment and present for it.
There's a great quote from Robert Frost, the writer Robert Frost, and it's no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. And I think, allow yourself to be surprised by it. Don't come up with a plot and then stick to it rigidly. Sort of if something else suddenly pops up, just go with that and see what happens.
I could talk to you forever. I mean, there's so much, isn't there? It's like, we've covered how to start, how to identify or kind of, channel what the idea should be, and get clear on why you're the person to write it, which is really useful. And then I guess once you've got the book, or later on, you're starting to think about, or if you're writing a non-fiction and you're pitching to a publisher, earlier on, you're going to need to think about how you're going to market that, or even if you're publishing, how am I going to get my book out there? But I think that's a separate conversation.
Here
For people to just kind of take and activate. So so we're getting together and doing a retreat.
We are. I'm so excited about this.
Gorgeous Brooklands Barn, 5th to 7th of May. And Brooklands Barn is in Arundel. It's a converted barn surrounded by countryside, and it's beautiful. It's really
lovely. And it's been highly converted, so I don't think you're not going to be sleeping on
highly
converted. The rooms are beautiful, aren't they? I couldn't believe it. Like, every room is so different, and I love what I loved about it. There are lots of little nooks and crannies where people can just go away and do a little bit of writing. You know, it's the perfect place for a writing retreat for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I know that we've got a mix of a small group booked on already, and it's a mix. I know that one lady is going to be doing working on her powerful memoir. Another is thinking about a novel. Another one, it's more related to the charity work that she does. But yeah, it's for this retreat. It's for anybody, whether you're doing non-fiction or fiction,
any age group as well. You know, in terms of who you want to write for. So it's. I mean, it's the kind of thing that I just so wish that I had when I was, you know, kind of starting out. But even if you're not, you know, a real beginner, I think it's perfect, because one thing I hear over and over again is people saying, "Oh God, I just don't have the time to write." Life is so distracting now, isn't it? You know, more so than ever. And so I think it's such a good gift to give to yourself. And that's another thing I think that's so important. People feel like the doubt kicks in and they think, oh, who am I to prioritize my writing? I haven't had anything published yet. I can't call myself a writer. And I think I get that, but I think it's so important to challenge that and say, actually, you know what, this dream is really important to me. Writing this book is really important to me. Or ask yourself the question, actually, who needs you to write this book? It's really important to them as well. And so it's a really good investment, I think. I think in the 3 days, you know, people will get so much done. And sometimes you just need that, don't you? That kickstart, that concentrated time to devote to your writing. And then when you go back, and we'll make sure as well that people have like a proper plan of action for when they go back out into the world and all the distractions, for how to prioritize the writing. But I really see this retreat as a great way of people just kick-starting their writing project, really getting some momentum going, so that then they can continue that in their everyday lives.
And our promise is that they'll leave with their book proposal. Leaning into the next step.
Absolutely. I mean, I coached someone the other day, and she said to me, I learned more from you in 2 hours about how to plot a book than I did on 3 Arvin courses. And Arvin courses are kind of like probably the best known writing.
Doesn't surprise me, Siobhan.
I was like, bloody hell. But you know, I think I'm not saying that to blow my own trumpet. It's just that I've got all these years of experience, and for 9 years I was working for a company where I was, you know, that's what I was doing every day. I was kind of plotting ideas. So it's become a bit of a superpower, a nerdy superpower.
Love it.
So I can sit with someone for 2 hours, and by the end of that session, we'll have an outline worked out for them.
Amazing.
And then even if they come with a roughest idea, and I know you can do the same. So
I mean, you'll be handling that, and then I'll be kicking in with that marketing. How are we going to share this book with the world? That's really where I think we're a great partnership. You know, how do we then get it out there, and making sure we've got that section of the book proposal really strong, and having fun with it. You know, where do you want to go and speak? You know, let's create the book tour. Let's think about a different PR opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a good investment, I think, if you're fiction or non-fiction, but I think particularly non-fiction, you know, if you're seeing a book as part of your business, I think coming on this retreat, getting a really solid book proposal together, getting a marketing plan from you, and then hopefully also getting some writing done. You know, theoretically, people could come and they could get for non-fiction, the whole thing done in 3 days. You know, so it's such a great investment, because then theoretically you could have a book deal within a month of coming on the retreat, you know. So
Yeah.
so I'm so excited about being able to offer this with you, because I think
Ditto.
it's just gonna be great. It's gonna be really...
Ditto. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. It's been lovely. I've got all inspired.
Me too. Me too. I want to go away and answer those questions and see what I really want to do in novels. So I'll be listening intently during the retreat as well as sharing. So we'll add all the links and stuff. And thanks anyone who's watching. And yeah, don't let your book dream, you know, got a lovely dream in the back, but let your dream breathe life into it, and don't just have it as another bucket list bullet that doesn't come to fruition.
Absolutely.
We're here and ready to help. And thanks for watching.
Yes, thank you.